It's weird. I think that these things just, I always feel like if you can inject a certain amount of, I don't know, I was talking about that today with somebody. It's like if the movie has some sort of bizarre soul.
Yeah, it has its own personality.
It'll live on, because there's tons of movies that I love that I don't know if they're technically good, but there's something special about them because the person who's making it, I mean, I think I always use, it's an obvious example, but even something like Plan 9 from Outer Space, there's some bizarre passion to the process that he put into making that film that it's better than some $200 million cold blockbuster.
You watch it and it entertains you.
Yeah, and there's just something about it. I mean, is it technically, no, but that's not the point. You know?
Well, you had done stuff before. Weren't you a PA or a set dresser on Pee-Wee's Playhouse?
I worked as a PA on the first season of Pee-Wee's Playhouse when they shot the show in New York.
How did that come about?
Well, I was working at this place called Broadcast Arts, which really just did TV commercials. They were known for being like the funky place, like the hip new wave place, and they did like Twizzlers commercials and things of that nature. And then one day they said, "Oh, we're going to do this thing with Pee Wee Herman," and it was funny because nobody there seemed to know who Pee Wee Herman was. But I was like all into it. I was like, "No fucking way!" And yeah, then they did the first season, and I think there was a lawsuit, and he moved the show to California. But it was pretty cool.
Well, you followed up House of a Thousand Corpses with The Devil's Rejects, which stylistically was a big change. You know, there was a lot of self-referential humor in Thousand Corpses, dark humor, red humor, but Devil's Rejects is very gritty and has this 16mm look to it and very grainy, and it's really a fantastic film.
Thanks.
It's very aggressive and very gritty. And were you a particular fan of the 70s horror films in particular? Yeah,
the 70s would be my favorite time for probably everything. Music, movies, fashion, everything. I feel like I'm trapped in that time period. But yeah, with Corpses was kind of like, I didn't know enough. You know, when you just don't have the knowledge to really go from, okay, this is what I see in my head, let me get it on film. You know, everything seemed like a compromise, it wasn't right. And quickly I knew the tone of that movie had become kind of goofy. So I just kind of went with it. I knew it wasn't. But it wasn't really what I had set out to do originally, or didn't think I wanted to. But with Rejects, I knew I don't want to make House of a Thousand Corpses Part 2. I want to make this sort of like postmodern, kind of bleak Western.
Now, you could have shot it in 35mm, but you made a creative choice to shoot in 16.
Yeah, I didn't like how Corpses looked. I thought it looked too clean. I actually, when I would watch the film, I go, you know, I like the scenes I shot with my camcorder better. Because that's the other weird thing that you get used to watching certain movies and they look a certain way.
Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And then when you do see a really nice print of you go, boy, the magic's gone. I remember I had this one movie, I forget what it was like Fraulein Devil. It was some Nazi exploitation film. And the quality of it was so bad you could almost not see it. I was like, loved it. And then I got on DVD and it was pristine. I go, this is just some shitty movie. Like it was like all the vibe it was gone because the vibe of the film was gone. So yeah, I went back and decided it wasn't a money choice. It was totally a style choice. Just I thought the 16 would give it the grit that I didn't get the first time out.
Yeah, we did The Stand on 16mm, not by choice, but because it was saving money. And I ended up thinking, you know, wow, we could not have finished this film without having all handheld, Steadicam, all this stuff that you couldn't do with a 35mm.
Yeah, no, it's so great. The cameras are so small. You can shove the cameraman in the back seat of a car and then everywhere, you know. And also, to me, it looks like the cameras and the lenses and the film stocks are so good now that 35 almost to me looks like HD and 16 looks like 35 to me. When you blow up the 16 negative, I go, oh, that looks like the way Taxi Driver looks or something to me. It has a certain grit that is just not there anymore. So
you don't think you'd be using digital filmmaking?
I don't know.
It's kind of becoming the standard.
I'm kind of like on the fence about it. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to make it look cool, but I'm still... I was just talking to my DP yesterday about it because he had just shot a movie with the Red Cam. And he was like, oh, he was saying how great it was, but he goes, but we wouldn't get the look that I know you want to get with it. Yeah. So.
You decided to bring the 16mm quality to Halloween. How did the remake of Halloween come about, your involvement in it?
That was just one of those times where, you know, you just take meetings, people are like, oh, it's, you know, so-and-so wants to meet you and talk about projects, and, you know, for 99% of the time, they materialize into nothing.
Right.
You go like, you walk out of the meeting and go like, what the hell was that? You know? And the thing that was really bizarre about this Weinstein meeting, I literally said I go, look, Andy, if this doesn't fucking become something, this is the last fucking meeting, because it was after a long series of meetings, I was like, this is fucking it.
It's soul destroying.
It is, and it's just, you just hate it, and it's time wasting, and you don't know what it's all about. And I went in for that meeting, and that was the one where overnight I was like, and I didn't even know what it was about. I walked in, he was like, he just goes like, Halloween. And I go, great movie. What is that supposed to mean? Are we talking in code? I don't know what you're talking about, Bob. And
this was Bob Weinstein.
Bob Weinstein, yeah, who's quite a character in his own right. And they didn't know what they wanted to do. I'm the one who proposed the remake. I think they were thinking a sequel, and I was
Halloween
like,
8 or 9
I was like,
or whatever.
I'm not making Halloween 9 or 8 or whatever the hell it was. In fact, I basically turned it down. I was like, because I kind of felt how everyone else felt, that a remaking Halloween was like, like pissing in the Holy Grail or something.
Yeah, I did the Shining miniseries,
Yeah.
so
yeah. Yeah, that's true. That was maybe even a tougher one, but I went home and I watched Halloween again and thought about it, because I'd never watched the film with that in mind.
Right.
Film, and I thought, like, well, this is a pretty thin. I mean, I think it's a brilliant movie, so whenever I discuss it, people think I'm criticizing it, but I'm not. I mean, I love the movie, and I've always loved the movie. But I thought, like, oh, it's kind of like there's not a lot to it. It's very simple, and the idea I pitched to Weinstein that they didn't go for was I wanted to make the first film just young Michael Myers. And maybe then do a little bit of him as an adult, and he breaks out, and that's where the movie ends. And then have maybe the second film be more of some of John Carpenter's movie.
So were you hoping to do a sequel from the beginning?
Well, I wanted to do it like Harry Potter style, shoot them both at the same time, so that, I thought, okay, maybe, because that was the other, I'm very like thrifty with money, and every time you make a movie, you go, God, it's the setup and the breakdown, this and that's all the cost. I mean, so I thought, why don't we just shoot 2 for the price of 1? I couldn't get anyone on board with that idea. So I essentially, if you watch my remake, it's almost like 2 movies shoved to one. It's one movie, then it suddenly becomes another movie.
Well, it's interesting because it not only is your own movie, but it's also, it pays a lot of homage to the original Carpenter film. I mean, I was in your editing room. You showed me a scene when you were cutting, and it was so much like the PJ. Yeah, there was the PJ Souls scene. I wasn't sure. I mean, I'm sure you went through this on The Shining, just figuring out like. Well, King wrote the screenplay for mine. So.
But I was like, I knew I wanted it to be different enough that as soon as it starts, you won't even be thinking about John Carpenter's film, because that's the only way to make it work. If you're sitting there thinking about John Carpenter's film the whole time, you're doomed.
Why remake a film if you can't bring something to it?
Right, it's totally pointless. But if you change it so much, then it becomes pointless on another thing. Like, hey, we remade Jaws, but we didn't use a shark. Like, fucking point then.
Right.
And I was really the only one that was holding on to keeping it Michael Myers and keeping sort of the classic mask and the jump. Nobody else cared.
Right. They just wanted Rob Zombie's Halloween.
They wanted to do something different, and I thought, like, oh my God, what's the point? I don't want to just take the title and make up this other thing. So I was sort of the one clinging to some of the classic moments, because I thought. But at the end of the day, I kind of go back and feel that my decision to do that was wrong, because I felt like when I made it totally different was when it worked the best. So, maybe, I mean, you never know.
It's hard to win in the case of remakes.
It is hard to win.
Even on an original film. But, the fans are going to bitch if you do it one way, or they're going to bitch if you do it another.
You can't make anybody happy. That seems to be the key.
The secret is to make the movie you want to make.
Yeah, that's so true, because that was the one thing. I remember with Devil's Rejects, when it was done, House of a Thousand Corpses was a fucking mess, so I never knew how I felt. But Rejects, I felt like, when it was done, me and the editor, I was like, I love this movie. I don't care what anyone says. I love it. Nothing's going to change my opinion. Because it was the only time, that was the only movie I ever was 100% free to do whatever I wanted. Whereas the Halloween process was not that.